Hey Peter,
Hey, John.
how's it going?
Long time no talk via the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. This is the resurrection edition of Crafting Performance by Contour Endurance. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but yeah, welcome to or welcome back to the Crafting Performance podcast.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
So, because it's been a while, I feel like we should redefine the goals of the podcast and what people can expect. So, you want to hit the people with the deets?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to reset. I'm sure we could spend probably an entire podcast talking about resetting and reframing things, which maybe we will talk about at some point. But yeah, this podcast, we got a little bit of momentum at one point. By that I mean like 1 millisecond, and then totally fell apart, and that's mostly my fault. From scheduling and whatnot, and we'll talk more about what's been going on in our lives here in a little bit. But yeah, I think with this podcast, I'm viewing it as a space to explore training science and not shine away from the nuance. I think, we live in an age where there is not a lack of information, but there is a lack of context and a lack of transferability of that information to your life. And so I want to explore that here, and kind of through the lens of professionals in the industry, as coaches, as athletes. And so it's kind of you get to be a fly on the wall and sit in on the conversations that we're already having and think about how this information actually applies and plays out in the real world.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. I also seek to, I think your point about there's not a lack of information is really true. And I think people can feel overwhelmed with how much is out there. Like you mentioned yesterday in our conversation, like if I hear one more hour-long podcast on zone two training, I'm gonna like shoot myself. That's just dark, right? But yeah, you didn't use those words, but I'm paraphrasing. But it's like
The
there's
sentiment
so
was
much,
there.
like, yeah, there's so much. Like, you should be doing this. You should be doing this. Like a Norwegian method. Should I do that? Like, yeah, 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 yeah. And so, like, there's tons of information about like what to do, but there's not a lot of context about like why you do things, which gives wisdom for like when should you implement what, and like what if you don't care about racing anymore? Like, how do you apply the things that you've been doing and training to the rest of your life? Like, I think that's ultimately the goal. Um, we can get more into that, but that's where I see this going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, the on the information piece, it's overwhelming what's out there, and offshoot of that issue is the hyper optimization and protocols and this and that. And I think that like creates the like analysis by paralysis, and then so people do nothing. Uh, they just freeze, and like I've been there and too. Uh, and yeah, it's like, do I do two a days? Do I do 4x4s? Do I do this or that? And then like, if I can't do that, then it's worthless. And it's like, it's not like, taking a step is often the right thing to do, regardless if it's a step this direction or that direction. It's a step, and that's.
Hmm. Well, cool. We should also mention the schedule. I think we're shooting for bi-weekly. Sometimes we'll miss, sometimes we'll exceed, but I think it's better to under promise, over deliver than to do the alternative.
Yeah, yeah, I think biweekly is a realistic goal for us and the schedules that we have. It's frequent enough that hopefully you guys don't forget about us, and yeah, and hopefully we get better at it. We're going to be rusty, especially this first episode and probably the first five, and hopefully we'll over time, just like we get better in training. So yeah, stick with us, and we're always open to feedback as well. Like if we're doing things that are bad or you think we could do better, like please let us know. Or if there's things you want us to cover, we're definitely open to that.
Let
So
John know I am terrible with feedback.
yeah, let me know, and then I'll soften it up so I can
Yeah,
give it
yeah,
to Peter.
you gotta velvet hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, diving in, kind of just catch up where we've been, what's been going on. Peter, what you've been up to the last, I don't know, 6 months.
Yeah, parenting, trying to keep my business alive. A lot of parenting and not tons of bike riding. I've been trying to keep the coals lit, but certainly haven't been like piling on the hours. And I've got a 1 year old, 1 year and a half year old named Reese, and then a 4.5 year old named Elliot, two boys. And that's been a lot and good, deeply good, but it takes most of my focus, which I'm happy to give them. But the emphasis on training ebbs and flows in my life. And I was in a period of ebb for a while, and that's okay. It's good. Yeah, and then our business is we make Nordic ski trail grooming equipment. So I do like the back end stuff, do a lot of fabrication, I do a lot of sourcing parts, I do a lot of CAD. So I've been exploring how to do it more efficiently and be better at it. The shutdowns for the government were rough on us, and then the warm winter has been hard, but we are still rolling, and I'm here today. I'll be making groomers later today, so yeah, things are overall pretty good, but um, just trying to make it happen, I guess.
Living life.
Yeah, my world has not been as dramatic as things going on in your life, I know. So, do you want to let people know what's been going on in your life?
Sure. Some people know, maybe not to the extent of what I'll pull back the curtain on here. Last 6 months have been drastically different than I would have anticipated. Back in June, at the end of June, I was on my way out to BC bike race and on a training ride had a freak accident of a crash and put my handlebar into my femoral artery, which is not advised. That is a critical artery, and you can, easily die from that and or lose your leg. And so that was on the table at the moment. And luckily, neither of those things happened. This was in Leavenworth, Washington, and then I got transferred to Seattle, and the team there was awesome. Saved my leg, saved my life, all good things. And the interesting thing about like a crisis like that is in the moment, the like acute piece is like much easier to swallow than like the recovery and like the ups and downs afterwards. And so, I got through that and began the recovery process, and it was going well. And then part of a surgery I had there was abdominal, and I started to have complications from that probably like a month or so, about 8 weeks, so like almost 2 months after surgery. And it took a lot of navigating to figure out what was going on, and hoop jumping and trying to get to the right doctors and this and that to figure it out. And that was pretty miserable. And so I was basically off the bike. The leg was healing right, but the abdominal stuff was not. And yeah, it was really dark for a while, and I was basically just staying afloat. Kudos to all the athletes and people that I work with for being patient with me when I had to cancel calls, and their flexibility on their end and like sticking with it. It is a partnership both ways, and so I really appreciate everyone for staying with me for those months. But long story short, I ended up having a surgery in November. Finally figured out what it was, which was great. And I started to feel better, started to recover. And then I started having issues again. And then another setback, and then another surgery on New Year's Eve. And so it's just kind of been this season of like crisis, start to feel better, crisis, figure it out, start to recover, crisis.
Yeah.
And I joke it's like the worst intervals ever, like surgery recovery intervals.
You don't get to choose. Like, intervals are wonderful because like it's your choice.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
it's
they're,
like
yeah, they're controllable, and
these are imposed on you.
yeah, yeah. But everything seems to be good now since the last surgery. Starting to find my groove again, which has been great. One thing I'll kind of like bring up, kind of coming out of that season that I've been reflecting on that I think would be worth people thinking about is I historically have used cycling and fitness and exercise in general as an outlet, which it is, and it's great. It's a great, stress reducer and whatnot. Typically, like the most stressful parts of my life, I've turned to the training process as my outlet because it is one thing that you can control and there's measurable results and there's all these things. And that's a really beautiful part to that. But that was something I had to wrestle with because it was like one of the things I couldn't do
Hmm.
during this time. And so, like what are your other coping strategies?
Yeah.
And not just always like running to the one thing and having it as a tool in the toolbox, but having other tools.
Yeah, that is super, super important. That jives with what we were talking about yesterday with I used to tell my students like everyone's playing different games, and like in high school context, you could say like some kids' game is to get straight A's, or try and be valedictorian. Some people's games are to try to be the best athlete they can. Some people's games try to be funny. Some people's games are to try to experience as much pleasure as possible through whatever means. And everyone's playing different games. And like, I think wisdom is finding like what perspective is going to serve you really well in the long term. And I think the game that you had to play that life imposed on you for that period was like, I need to be as healthy as possible. And it's what health means changed for you, for prior to that accident, health was performance, probably, and like there's like your mental and spiritual health are tied to your body for sure. But then all of a sudden, like you had this crash and this like recovery, and all of a sudden it was like I know for a while their performance was kind of off the table. Like you weren't thinking about it. It was like, well, how do I like continue to eat? How do I continue to like make it from day to day and like how do I figure out what's actually going on? How do I contact the right expert to like give me good advice and get me back on a path where I can thrive? Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
totally important, super important.
Yeah, context change. But like something you alluded to even at the beginning of this call was kind of like how this like training process and, athletic career expression shapes you as a person.
Yeah.
And that's something I definitely relied on during, the recovery process was, like these character building aspects of training aren't just
Mm-hmm.
isolated to the interval session, to the racing.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah.
It can transfer outside of your life. And I think that's one of the beauties of it. And, a very minute example of this is, like and like we've built this into like the contour endurance ethos, but like being process first, fall in
Mm-hmm.
love with the process and not like the results.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't control a lot during this time. I couldn't perfect a lot, and one of the only things I could eat for a little while was like scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
Eggs are notoriously hard to cook with perfection. Like
Yeah.
chefs, that is a measurement of being like a great chef. And then so I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get really, really good at cooking the best eggs. And like
Yeah.
that was my focus for a little while. Was
Uh-huh.
like that was the one thing a day that I was like, man, this is like
Yeah.
what I'm going to do, and this is
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
be, a measurement one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some freedom in that, of just like I get to express that part of me in a different context.
For sure.
And yeah, I got good at cooking eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think about so much. But the first thing I would say is like the goal of working with athletes is it's kind of Ted Lasso-esque, but like we're trying to create like excellent men and women, like people who are driven and focused at whatever they do. And that might be mountain biking. It's mountain biking right now or off-road cycling right now. And that can change, but like the lessons are so applicable everywhere. Like discipline, like creativity, like knowing that you can think, knowing that you can suffer, knowing that you can be okay when things feel dark. Like
Hmm.
those are super strong lessons from cycling and training, and that's the real value. And this alludes back to our previous conversation about there's no lack of information, and like it's not really that much of a secret. Like there's no secret recipe to becoming faster, like it's out there. Like it's not a mystery. Like put a lot of time on your bike, like cover all your bases, aerobic and anaerobic. Like it's not a mystery. But what is the real value is like establishing good patterns of discipline, establishing good communication strategies with the human. That is so much more valuable than like just checking green boxes and like becoming faster for a short period of time. Like the real goal is character development. And it's kind of like a sneaky goal because like the goal that sells is like speed,
Sure.
or podium that sells. But like the real goal is character development.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a catch 22 because it's like if you want the result, if you want the podium, like you have to do the other stuff. Like there's no
Hmm.
shortcut and there's no secret sauce. And I think that's where like a lot of my frustration is right now with like the
Hmm.
industry is it's like secret sauce or it's like recycled things like oh it's all zone 2. Next year it'll be
Hmm.
back to intervals or then it'll be back to sweet spot and it's just going to keep doing this and like people are going to keep
Hmm.
trying to sell and like I get it like we have to draw people in and we have to like make a living, like this is the only thing that I do. If I don't have athletes coming to me and that like, trust me to work with them towards their goals, like I don't get to put food on the table. So like I understand the drive for that and the drive to like be relevant. But on the flip side of that, like I think we owe it to the athletes and owe it to the people that are like looking for this to be honest and like there isn't a secret sauce. Like it's not sexy. It
Hmm.
is discipline. It is doing the simple things consistently over time. And that's really hard. And that's okay. Like we have
Yeah.
to admit that it's hard to go to bed at the same time every night, that it's hard
Yeah.
to eat a healthy diet when we're constantly sold convenience and tasty snacks,
Especially if you're 20 years old and at a college where nobody is going to bed at 9 p.m. and they're all eating like garbage and like it's hard to stand out in that way, but that's what it takes.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
this makes me go ahead.
No, no, you go for it.
Okay. Um, have you ever read The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus? Albert Camus.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of value in absurdism, which is his philosophy that he puts out. And briefly summarized, he's like the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is like this man condemned by the gods to like roll this boulder up this hill every day, and it rolls down to the back of the hill, and he's got to do it again and again and again. And in a certain light, like training can feel like that. Like I am rolling this boulder up a hill every day, and it feels absurd. There can be viewing you can view cycling in the light of being like this is a little bit meaningless. It's like there's a Bowerman quote, like if you can master something essentially meaningless like running, then like you can master something that has meaning, which is your life. Camus has different, he wouldn't agree with that, but we're getting into the weeds. But his Camus' perspective is like you have to imagine Sisyphus happy. Like, how do you find happiness or joy in like the process of training or studying or whatever it is that your goal is? How do you find happiness or like a little bit of defiant joy in the midst of like this goal that might feel impossible? You might be training harder and being more dedicated than your peers, and they still might be faster than you. You might get sick, whatever. Like, but how do you find joy and meaning in the process in defiance of apparent meaninglessness? I would say like modifying that myth of Sisyphus, like how do you find joy in rolling a boulder up a hill for your whole life? You change through the process. Like eventually, like, oh, it just becomes habitual. Like I'm just gonna do this for because I do it because it's like brushing my teeth. Like this is part of my rhythm and it's part of like how I find um a pattern and a way in the world. And it's a nice way to operate. And it has knock-on effects that I think Sisyphus might not immediately know that he's growing big shoulders and he's establishing patterns that apply to his life.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I think all that's true. I've been deeper like in the literature of expertise development
Hmm.
lately and all that holds true even though it's different language and more scientific language. But I think like something that we often forget is like we're pushing something anyways. Like we're going to be pushing that
Yeah.
boulder whether it's, cycling, whether it's work, whether it's whatever. It's like whatever we spend time doing, we're gonna get good at. Whether that's
Hmm.
wasting time and being sucked into social media and rage, or whether that's refining ourselves through the training process. Like
Yeah.
we're going to get better at one of those avenues. Like there is no like neutral. Like we're always moving a direction,
Yeah. There's no easy
positive and
path.
negative. Yeah, there's no easy path in life, you know. Even people that appear to have it easy like don't. Like we're all human. It might look different,
Hmm.
but yeah, you know, we're definitely on a philosophical hole right now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I think kind of pulling it back to like, you know, kind of who we are and the athletes we work with and kind of like what we're hoping to achieve is, you know, like, hey, we're gonna do something and like we might as well be the best at it that we can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what are the tools? And when I say tools, it could be training methods, it could also be mental strategies, coping strategies to do it the best that we can, both in cycling and, you know, managing life. Because
Yeah.
not everyone on our roster is a professional.
Right. Yeah.
Some people are, and some people have all the time in the world to just devote their entire life to this. But
Hmm.
many and most are not, and it's you know, how does this all fit into your life? And it's a give and
Hmm.
take. I was talking to an athlete the other day about this. Of just like we've talked about this before of like LSS, like life stress score instead of TSS, and then there's like GSS, which is like global stress score, which is like super high right now in the world. And you know, to a degree, we try to compartmentalize, and there is like some legitimate like, but it can be a legit strategy at times to like compartmentalize and separate things. But all these barriers are far more permeable than we want them to be. Life affects training and training affects life. Like, you know, if you say I gave you a 25-hour training week, you're probably not going to be a great dad that week.
Right. No, no. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if you could even like accomplish that because of the
Yeah.
demands of being a dad, right? Like,
Yeah.
and by compartmentalizing, I think we often like we create a situation that's a lose-lose, right? And
Hmm.
not realistic. And then so we end up instead of doing something, we ended up doing nothing. But
Hmm.
I think that's we can save that for another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. All super important stuff. Yeah. I think it just comes down to having intention. Like what do you want and how can you make it happen? Because if you don't choose, you're going to be aimless, and then aimlessness gets you nowhere.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like if you want to pursue this, like really go for it. Really go commit, you know?
Hmm.
And even if it doesn't work out, like you'll have learned some things on the way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You'll change your goals, and that's cool too. But being excellent at what you pursue is really important.
Yeah, acknowledging when things change is can be hard,
Hmm.
but it's important and it allows you to ebb and flow through life, right?
Hmm.
Like there are going to be seasons where it's all about performance, and that's great. There's going to be seasons where that is very low on the list, but that doesn't mean it has to completely go away. And I think
Hmm.
the only way to make sure it doesn't completely go away is to acknowledge that that is changing. Because if you keep trying to like act like it's the highest and that's the like number one priority while these other things are actually higher than it, it'll
Yeah.
totally fall off. And
Yeah.
versus like we can like shift and this becomes a maintenance thing. And I really enjoy the 2 hours a week that I get to ride. And one day I'll be able to ride more versus like questioning. And I like we get to this point sometimes of like, is going and riding for 30 minutes even worth it if my
Oh yeah.
baseline's
Yeah.
3 hours? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like, yes, it is.
I definitely fall into that. And I was feeling real cooked. I did it to myself, 100%, but I was feeling so cooked in June. And then I was like, if I'm feeling this cooked and I've got all these other things, like I feel like I was able to keep the throttle twisted, like pretty good for the demands on my life from like October through June last year. And then I was feeling cooked and I still had all these demands and they were increasing in some ways. And I was like, well, I'll just stop training. And like, I could have, instead of just like stopped, I could have just been like, okay, like, hey, instead of doing 12 to 15, I'm gonna scale it back and I'm just gonna do like, I'm gonna shoot for 5. And I would be in a better place now physically than I was. The fact that it bleeds all together, like, I don't think that would have detracted from the goals that I accomplished over the last 6 months. Sort of like, I think I function better when I have like a large list of things to do. When I used to be a teacher, I would not function very well in the summer, even though I had all the time in the world, because like all of a sudden my list of things to do went from 100 things a day to like 10. Instead of doing all 100 and being like, I'd go from like, oh, I've got all the time in the world, and then I get to the end of the day and I haven't even done the 10 things I had to do.
Yeah.
Because I was just frittering away time. But
Yeah, I think it's, it gets into like some of the skill sets, yes, life, but specifically related, tying it to training. Like training isn't just the riding,
hmm
it's the like assigning time and the scheduling. And I've been like running into this a lot with athletes, especially as like schools start back up, jobs, career, like all that kind of stuff gets going. Even like, just coming out of the holiday season, like people get thrown off their rhythm and then they have to get back into things. Like have to schedule, like you have to like do the administrative work
yeah,
to be able to enjoy this. And I forget the name of the law, but basically, whatever amount of time that you assign to the task is how long it's going to take.
yeah,
And so if you have 24 hours to do something, it's going to take that full 24 hours. Even though the task itself might be like a 15-minute task, you're going to
yeah,
just stretch it all day long, like you may have done in
yeah,
the summer for something. But when you're limited on time and I have 1 hour to do this, it's going to
yeah,
take that hour. Like you're going
yeah,
to get it done.
yeah,
Obviously, there's caveats there of like things that actually take a very long time, like building something. But
yeah,
in general, I think, we got to remember that. And so if you have a 3 hour ride on the plan or hour and a half ride, assign it, give yourself a little bit of margin on your calendar. Say it's an hour and a half, give yourself a 2 hour window to like, get ready and, get your gear off or shower or whatever. But like put it in the calendar so you actually do it instead of like, oh, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it later. And then
yeah,
it's 9 p.m.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And throw your phone in the garbage.
Yeah, yeah,
Huge waste of time.
yeah.
That's an
Huge waste of
aside. We
time.
can talk about that later. Well, we've gotten it deep in the weeds. I think that was good, but it was good. Good to catch
Deep
up
in the
heart to
weeds.
heart. Yeah. Do you want to cover some hot topics, some
Yeah,
things that are in our world?
yeah, some hot topics industry wide. There's plenty. We could talk about like we mentioned a little bit yesterday, like the economics of like the bike industry and all of that. I'll probably save that for or let other experts talk about that one. But the one that I want to talk about that came up in the last like week or so is the concept of a power passport. For people that aren't familiar with professional cycling, it isn't just riding your bike all day, every day. There's a lot of stuff that these pros have to deal with in order to do that. Sure, there's like the training and the nutrition and all that stuff, but they also have to comply to a lot of standards and checks and balances, right? Because cycling has a dirty history that it is trying to escape and arguably will never be able to escape. This happens in other sports, but obviously cycling is like the one that is known for like doping and cheating, particularly from the 90s era.
It's like kind of a catch-22 because cycling has tried so hard to be clean when, in my opinion, a lot of sports, the mainstream sports, like they don't try at all. But because of the emphasis on clean sport, that has like branded cycling with this label of being unclean,
Yeah. Yeah,
which is
it's
sad.
like it brings a magnifying glass to it. And like I'm a huge advocate for clean sport. I want it to be a fair thing, but think we may be edging a little too far with this one. And that's the power passport. So one of the things that people have to abide by is one, the whereabouts. So basically you have to let the UCI know where you are all the time so they can test you at their will and random. If you don't comply to that, you can effectively eventually get banned from the sport. So there's that. And then the second, or not the second, but one of the other pieces is a biological passport. So that's basically, hey, what is, Peter's baseline, blood levels for X, Y, and Z. And then they, can test. And if all of a sudden, your, hemoglobin count is way, way, way higher than your baseline, that's a red flag, right?
Doing that sauna every day, 10 hours a
All
day.
in sauna. Yeah, I live in a sauna, an altitude chambered sauna.
Yeah.
But now there is a proposed, and that was a very brief summary of those systems, and there's a lot more intricacies to it, so please don't think that is all encompassing or that I'm the leading expert in that. But this new concept of a power passport is that the International Testing Agency would require athletes to submit all of their power data, and then yeah, they're constantly submitting their power data. If there's any outliers, then they would come back and potentially test to see if something's going on.
Yeah.
And like ultimately what they're trying to do is have another avenue to make sure that like nothing fishy is happening, which I can respect that sentiment. I just do not think that this is the right way to go about it from an athlete and a coach perspective.
I have a different opinion. I don't see that. I see that as being solvable. I think statistics could take care of that, especially in aggregate. Like if they had enough data, they would know, like, oh, like, hey, um, this athlete's normally like working from a baseline FTP of 345, and oh, okay, like they can know, oh, this can ebb and flow, like whatever it is,
Within a
one standard
percentage.
deviation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 375, sometimes it's 300. And I think statistics could take care of that. I think the bigger problems are technical, um, because like, what if an athlete changes bikes and like they're on a Shimano power meter and they get this huge boost? Or what if they're on a XKD or a Favero Asioma and like they switch? I think there's some practical technical concerns where it's like these things are not standardized. Like I think everyone knows if you've been on Strava at all, like you see data of like peers or friends and you're like, I like stomped this person in a race and they're showing like they can do 385 for an hour. It's like something's wrong. Like of course there's
Mm-hmm.
like you see raw numbers and you don't see like watts per kilogram. You know, there's all sorts of confounding variables here, but I think there are big like technical variables, like even within the same power meter on a different day with temperature or humidity or all these things that like potentially could affect the machine. Like it's not perfect data. To give an example, like I use like the cheapest possible heart rate monitor that I can find. It's a Magene. Because I just find they break. The good ones break, the bad ones break, and I know like, oh, like my heart rate data is sus. Especially if I've been using this thing for like 6 months, like the heart rate data is not reliable. Like it's going to show big periods where it like drops out, or it's like showing the wrong. Like you can feel you develop an intuition. You're like, hey, like my heart rate's probably in mid 150s, and it's saying I'm at like 130, and it's like this is not right.
Yeah.
I think there are just some big technical hurdles. I actually like the power passport in theory. I just don't think we're technically there yet. I think it would be great
Yeah.
to be like, hey, uh-oh, like, this kid is showing these values, like, and it's like the whole thing, like one of the suspicious things is like not that someone is good, but like all of a sudden they're good. Like
Mm-hmm.
if it's a rapid rise, a rapid ascent, if they were like just a mid-pack guy, and then all of a sudden they're like winning the tour, like that's suspicious. But if they've been good for a decade, it's like it's like little steps instead of like
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple things there. One, like, agree the technical issue is real. I'm going to take a sidestep to that and, like, for the athlete's sake, how much anxiety that can create.
oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like, oh no, my power meter spiked. Now I'm going to get flagged and now I'm going to have to get
mm-hmm,
tested. Like,
yeah,
that seems like it would be crippling at times, right?
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm,
I've had
yeah,
my power meter break where it like its flag is showing like an 1800-watt sprint. I can't do that. I've never been
yeah,
able to do that, right? And like,
yeah,
like yes, you can like clean the data, but like presumptually like they're looking for that, right? Making sure no data is edited. Like that would be very anxiety inducing. Like, like I had a good day on the bike, but now I'm like stressed out because my power meter freaked out, and
Yeah.
now I'm gonna get in trouble. Like
Yeah.
that just doesn't seem worth it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think culturally, it creates a bigger issue of being married to the numbers. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, we got to move away from that as a culture. Like, yes, it is a tool and like we train off of it, but like we shouldn't be racing off of it. We should be racing off of feel. And like, I'm giving more and more people RPE workouts and like, hey, quit being like beholden to this. But then if your entire like career hinges on you being
For your
within
livelihood.
a
Yeah.
margin of this baseline, then you're back to being beholden to the numbers.
Hmm.
So I think there's that. And then the other thing that like happens that we see like both physiological and like in a skill space is you like work really hard, you grow, and then you hit a plateau for a really long time. And like there's quiet work going on, and then all of a sudden you have a breakthrough. And then that
Hmm.
cycle continues. And like a plateau doesn't mean like you're done growing. It just means you're at a plateau right now, and like there will eventually be a breakthrough.
Other things are developing that are not going to show themselves right away.
Right. And so when that breakthrough happens, I don't know if you should necessarily be penalized for it. And maybe like, yeah, it wouldn't show up within like the statistical like deviation. Uh, but, to your point of the like, someone's all of a sudden really good. Like, I don't know if we need like 24-hour surveillance to like see that. Like, we see that in the race, we see that
Hmm.
occur in real time. And just go test after that,
Hmm.
biologically test, right? Like I just
Yeah.
don't think the 24-hour like surveillance of power data gets to like the heart of the issue. Like, go look at their bike, go look at their blood after the event. Like
Hmm.
just test more. Seems
Yeah.
like that would work better than 24-hour surveillance of a small handful of professionals.
Yeah.
Another
Yes.
hot topic that is going on that you're far more engaged in than I am is the 32-inch wheel,
Sign me up. I am
super
here
wagon
for it.
wheel.
I'm 100% in. Yes. Uh, People might not know, but I build and design frames um, to be built. I've built, I don't know, 20 in my shop. And then I've probably designed and had built like 30, 40-ish, I don't know, a bunch of custom bikes that I get manufactured. And so I'm building, my brand used to be called Hail Cycles. It's been very dormant since I moved to Wyoming. I've probably built 10, or I've had built 10 titanium bikes. So I'm having built a 32 frame as an experiment, and I'm super stoked. So the questions for you, John, and for the listeners are, how's it going to ride? And like, what are the issues? Like, there's been a lot of talk on the internet about it. I re and is it the same transformative technology that it was between 26 and 29, which I was a part of, like when I was a junior, and through the first part of my collegiate racing, it was pretty much 26 everybody. Then 29ers started becoming more ubiquitous, and it was almost overnight. It was like boom, like you cannot ride a 26er if you're like a performance oriented mountain biker. It was like super clear, and like there was almost the companies or the industry lagged behind in that regard. There was companies like Giant and Specialized were very reticent at first to commit to 29, and Giant came out with this huge like book like, hey, 27.5 is going to be the future, and we're not going 29, and it's like better. Specialized was like, we're not making 29ers, like 26ers are better. And then it just became pretty obvious, like, oh, um, it's a big advantage to be on a 29-inch wheel. And so 32 is the same ish kind of step up in diameter and circumference. The question is, at what point are there, like, obviously there's a limit to that advancement, because like why not go 36? Why not go 40? There are limits to like how a bicycle can handle. Um, and like, are there going to be like factors that push down on the performance of a large wheel that are ultimately going to limit the size of the wheel? So the issue of tires is getting solved. There's only one performance tire right now, the Aspen 2.4, which is not the fastest tire on the 29-inch side. Like, they're fine, but I'd probably choose like a Schwalbe. Like, I think a Schwalbe Rick or a Thunderbird is much faster than an Aspen, but there's no third option yet, and hopefully that will come. So here's the frame. The other design constraint, height is the big one. I'm 6 foot, 6'1", and I don't buzz my butt that often on a 29er, but I know like this is bringing the tire closer to my butt. And like also the terrain here in Wyoming, I don't live in North Carolina anymore, but the terrain in Wyoming is like relatively tame. And so like I'm not in those situations. So here's, I don't, you can't see it, and I'll just, this is my design. The other handling constraint is to have an appropriate bottom bracket height. You're using a lot of bottom bracket drop. So like this frame that I designed for the same bottom bracket height that I'm used to uses a 92 millimeter bottom bracket drop. So that means the bottom bracket, the center of the bottom bracket is like approaching 4 inches lower than the axles. And so if you envision your axles as being like the point that you're hanging off of, in a sense, like if your bottom bracket is hanging below your axles, like is there a is that going to be a factor of like keeping the bike more upright and like its ability to like turn in, like flopped over, which you need to do for a bicycle to corner really well? Is that going to be hampered, or is that a non-issue? Like, am I purely pivoting off of like the contact patch of the tire on the ground? In which case, the bike's going to handle about the same, or like lifting the front end. Like, it's one thing to just like have perfect rollover or as good as possible rollover, which a 32er is going to be better at than a 29er. The ideal situation would just be like not hit the bump in the first place, and like, can I properly like get the front wheel over stuff? Because my chainstays are as short as they can be. You can look, my like my rear wheel here is tucked, really tucked. So the diameter of a 32-inch wheel, um, when it's the tire increases as it's like aged for a little bit. Like if you ride it for a week, it's going to get a little bit wider. And so 822 millimeters is the diameter of the tire of the 2.4, and it's only 7.5 millimeters from the seat tube. And the seat tube is already offset, and so like I could offset it more, but then my actual seat tube angle is going to be pretty slack. So this is based on a 75-degree C-tube angle, which I think would be a good compromise for me. I don't really, that's about as steep as I'm willing to go. I think that like the Endurobro crowd is really keen on like 78-degree C-tube angles, really steep, but I don't think it's appropriate for cross-country riding. I don't think it allows like your center of mass to be directly over the pedals in a good way, unless you're doing purely winch and plummet riding. But the steep C-tube angle also puts too much weight on your hands, and your hands hurt. And especially if you're riding for like, I think a lot of the steep C-tube angle geometry emphasis has been as a result of like people who are not riding very long. You know, if you do a 2-hour ride and it's primarily winch and plummet, yeah, the steep C-tube angle is going to be great. But if you're out there for like 3 or 4 hours on like epic backcountry rides, which is what I like, it's not good. So that was a lot, but it's a big experiment and I'm very excited for it. But the other, I think it could be a really huge advantage in gravel, because sometimes, honestly, like the surface that I'm riding and racing gravel on are sometimes like as a surface is looser and bumpier than a single track trail. And a lot of times because the trail is just, or the road is like washboard or like loose gravel. And like suspension's not as good at dealing with that as like a tire, and just like having a very low angle of attack, I think is going to be a market difference. The big question is the rollover, is a rolling resistance advantage enough to overcome the aerodynamic disadvantage because you're increasing your frontal area by a bit. I also think the acceleration concerns in gravel are less important. I don't think they're hardly important at all because like you're simply not accelerating nearly as much as you do on a mountain bike, especially in a mountain bike race. I think for the kind of mountain bike that I do, which is like the last time I did a short track race was probably 2013. I don't anticipate myself doing a short track race for a long time, but I'm interested. I will definitely do a lot more 100 miler mountain bike races. Maybe I'll do 50 more in my life. And like, you go around corners and you got to go up hills and stuff. Broadly, your speed is more consistent. You're not accelerating as much as you are in short track or even XCO. Like a ton of acceleration XCO. I see 32ers being adopted like this year. I know from people that I know, it's gonna happen. Definitely in men's cross country. There's also like the industry talk is like, is this a way for bike companies to charge retail again? Because like companies are having a hard time selling product at retail, and there's no used 32ers out there. There's not a single one. So like if you want new stuff, like you got to buy new stuff. And but I do think there's like reason for it to be accepted. And I think my bet is we'll see World Cup wins on 32ers this year. Yeah, I know that there's tons of prototypes out there. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts? I'm also taller than you. I'm,
sure.
4 or 5 inches taller than you.
Yeah, I'm like the American average,
Yeah,
5'9". Uh,
yeah,
but I mean, and I haven't buzzed my butt on a tire ever, maybe. Like,
yeah,
maybe except for like when we had high posts and you had to like go behind the saddle in order to do
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
But yeah, so I think yeah, for like folks that are on the shorter side, maybe that it like is a legit concern. I know it is in downhill, and that's where like mullets and stuff, you see. But yeah, I think it's going to be advantageous in some circumstances, but I think it's going to be not as good in others. And whether it's a tighter course where you do have more of those accelerations from like a borderline standstill, like a really tight switchback into a climb, like I could see that being a disadvantage, both from the just getting around the corner itself and then getting back up to speed. But a course isn't defined by like one feature. It's we say this a
hmm
lot is like average speed wins races. So
yeah,
does it make up for it somewhere else? Then it very well might be more advantageous overall. Will you see people like picking and choosing based off of course? Obviously, that's like a luxury that basically only pros have, right? Because they have multiple bikes, wheels, etc., provided for them. It would be very expensive for other people to do. Maybe, but that's kind of where it gets into industry because like if industry is like trying to push this, they're going to put X rider on it in every race, just to try to
yeah,
market it
yeah, yeah,
versus like the picking and choosing. Because from a marketing standpoint, that would say like, oh, it's like helpful sometimes, not all the time. And I think when you were selling something, you want it to be like this thing that like people have to buy because it's that much better.
yeah, yeah. I also feel like I have the luxury of like, and it's a luxury and an affliction in that like I like weird new stuff. Or it doesn't have to be new. I like weird stuff, and this definitely scratches that itch. And it's also uh like I have the ability, like how many people have the ability to be like buy a 32-inch frame or make a 32-inch frame? Like not many, you know, especially this year. And the other thing I would harken back, I would remember is like when the transition between 26 and 29 came out, it was not immediately obvious to everybody that it took a while for 29s to become extremely dominant. Even like Nino Schurter was winning on 26ers and 27.5 like deep into the 29er era. So like I think there's almost like a psychological advantage to being like, hey, it doesn't matter. Like the machine is important, but like if you're at a certain threshold of having a good machine, which probably everyone listening to it is, listening to this is, it's the machine is the non-issue, like it is a small change. And like what's more important is being used to it, and having like your fit like dialed. And those things are free. Like getting used to the bike and having your fit dialed and your suspension set up well, that is free. And that's definitely more important than like a marginal difference when like the wheels, you're definitely at an equipment disadvantage in terms of like sourcing tires. Like what if you rip a tire and like you only had one spare and like all of a sudden like there's no bike shop in the country that has 32-inch mountain bike tires on the wall right now. Like they're
Yeah.
hard to get still. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a pros only thing this year. Pros and weirdos like me. I'm a non-pro weirdo this year, and then I think next year or 2027 is becoming like more ubiquitous.
Yeah, I have absolutely no data to back this, but this is a rough observation. Is I think it's typically a 2 season leg behind pro or like something kind of coming out and then the majority of people buying into it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And total side tangent would be I think that's why lifetime banned drop bars this year for Leadville is, like 2 years ago, it was like a couple dudes doing it. Last year, it was a lot of people. And I think this year you would have seen like more Joe Blows trying to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
it. And there would have
yeah,
been high consequence for that
yeah,
on the safety side.
yeah,
But I think the tech thing would be like 32-inch would be similar. And there's like, from a racing standpoint, if you're like only riding in your town or only driving, it's not an issue. But like bike bags, your
yeah,
32
yeah.
inch is not fitting in there, right?
Right.
Like 29
Yeah.
is barely fitting as
You
is.
take your tire off.
Yeah, and like that's super annoying. Like
It's really annoying.
as a coach that runs a team, it would be an absolute nightmare to have 10 people fly into a race and have to then put 20 tires on.
Right. Yeah. Or like you bring extra wheels and tires to the race. Like it's a big hassle now. Like what are you going to do? Like you can have right now you can have everyone on the team has Boost 29er wheels,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like those are really easy to find and you already have a ton of pairs of good pairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some like grander logistical stuff that like yeah, for this first bit will definitely be pro restricted. Those things just aren't as big of a factor to them.
Yeah.
But to your point of like World Cup wins being on them, it's like yeah, that'll probably happen. But the question is like, would that have person like won anyways? And the answer is probably yes.
Yeah. Probably yes. Yeah, yeah. For
But I
sure.
think like if it's a breakthrough and it's like they're the only ones on 32ers and like they've never won before, then like yeah, maybe that's a at least a good marketing opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
Correlation
Yeah.
causation aren't the same.
Yeah.
Marketing will make you think that. Uh,
Yeah.
but if Chris Blevins wins and he's on some new 32-inch Epic, it's
Yeah.
Chris Blevins. Like he's really good.
Yeah.
Like
He's really
as
good.
is. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
The
I'm
last thing
excited.
I think on that one that is just like a silly side part is the UCI ruling against mullets. Seems like one of the silliest rules to exist to me in the XCO space. Like I could see like a situation where 32-29 um, would be like a good compromise between the two,
Hmm. Hmm.
but like you
Yeah.
can't do it right now,
Yeah.
and that seems like a silly restriction that I just don't understand.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the mullet thing I think could be really common. I also think like it's easier to experiment with, Like forks are a problem right now. Like there aren't like there's that weird Intend one, but aside from like weird Euro stuff, you got to get like really creative. You can adopt an old RS1, which is like not that popular even when it came out. And so there are not that many of them. I have a trust fork that's I'm adopting, and that thing's really heavy and probably won't work that well. But it's real weird, and it's another thing that is like a moth to the flame for me. I'm the moth, and that thing's the flame. But yeah, like forks are a problem. They won't be a problem very long. But to that point, like let's say you have you know the OIs or whatever, and like is that 120 in the front
mm-hmm.
native?
Yeah,
So Like you could drop down to 100 or 90 and put a 32-inch wheel, and it's like not going to mess the geometry up that badly. Like you just drop the travel of your fork, put a bigger wheel in it. And that, for many people, like let's say the fork is $1,000 and your wheel, you can get a wheel built by somebody. If you're not building your wheels yourself, you can get a wheel built for $500 or something. And then you're not in that much money to experiment with a 32er. But ultimately, I think that's the more important thing. Like we were talking about before, is just being comfortable, and the fastest riders are probably going to win regardless.
Yeah, yeah, we're a handful of percent, if that.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, probably more marginal.
Yeah, I looked up, I did a little math. I didn't look up, but so let's just do a little math easy. So 6 hours is 360 minutes, and 1% of that is 3.6 minutes. And that's not nothing. Like that's a substantial victory, but like it's not that much. It's like we're not talking half an hour, and
Hmm.
that's a long race. Like
Yeah,
6 hours is a long time. And like, yeah.
yeah, uh, yeah, it's a small percentage, and then like I think there's another like reality too of like there's many roads to Rome, right? Like there's
Hmm.
many ways to get to that 3 minute advantage. You could be a little bit fitter, you could be using this wheel, you could be a little bit more aerodynamic,
More
you could
tactical. Yeah.
be more tactical, you could just
Fuel
like waste
better.
less energy. And like ideally you're doing like all the things, right, to create like the biggest advantage possible. But at the end of the day, we can't optimize like everything. Everything is a give and take, right? Like you can have the most aerodynamic position ever, but you can't hold it for more than 8 minutes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Without having a
Let's see.
spasm.
Yeah, yeah.
So like there's always this give and take, and it'll be interesting. And at the end of the day, like I want to see the sport grow and progress, and I like tech. I wouldn't put myself fully in like the skeptic camp or like anti. Like you see that a lot in the industry, like
Yeah.
never will we change. Like
It's
definitely
cool
not
to hate
there.
things.
Yeah, but kind of like we'll see. I'm not like ready to like invest thousands of dollars
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, yeah. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I'll let you be the
Yeah.
guinea pig.
Okay. That sounds good. Hey, this is great. I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, yeah, we're
Yeah.
a little over.
Yeah. We should ask, if you're listening to this, let us know in the comments, like pro 32, anti 32. You got to pick a side. Like, what do you want?
You can't play neutral like I'm trying to.
No neutral.
You
No
have to choose
fence.
the
No
side.
fence sitting. You got to choose a side. Yeah.
Yeah, and then let us know what you want covered, right? Like we view this as a conversation, yes, between us, but also between anyone listening and our grander community, even if it's maybe like 12 of you. Maybe it's more than that. We don't know. But yeah, let us know what you want covered, and then last plug is we do this, yes, for fun, but the bulk of what we do is work with athletes towards their unique goals and help craft their performance in the context of their lives. And so if you're wanting to potentially have a partner in that and some guidance, hit us up. We would love to work with you. We have some capacity between Peter and I, and then we'll also have a new coach coming on here in the foreseeable future. So definitely let us know. Reach out for a discovery call. We'll sit down. We'll talk about what you are interested in accomplishing and see how we can best help you make that happen.
Yeah. Sounds great. Very
All right.
fun.
Peace.
Okay. Deuces.